legendary singer, frontman, the voice of Ratt, Mr. Stephen Pearcy, comes out swinging, saying that Mick Mars was treated with, quote, disrespect by Motley Crue. That's a bombshell, guys. I mean, we've got Phil Lewis from LA Guns. He made similar statements, but LA Guns did not come up with Motley Crue. Ratt did. Motley Crue had that little apartment by the whiskey where Nikki and Tommy and Vince lived. Ratt had Ratt Mansion West. Not a much nicer dwelling. They basically cut their teeth on the Sunset Strip. They were a club band, and they signed a major deal, and the rest is rat and roll. You know what I mean? They topped the charts, had the platinum records, the world tours, and they were in Motley videos, and Motley was in their videos. These guys were two peas in the same pod, the decadent lifestyle, the excess is best. And Stephen Pearcy probably has insights into Motley Crue that nobody does, you know, because him and Warren, they were so tight with the Crue guys. And honestly, when you've got someone like Stephen Pearcy coming out, I mean, you got John Corabi, who was in the band, right? But in the 90s, which I think is different because, you know, but still, John Corabi, that's a major, voice in this whole matter. John Corabi is the first one that said, something about this isn't right. You know, Mick wouldn't just quit. There's more to the story. So John, you know, and the video that I've got, John Corabi was right, it's like got like 10,000 views, which is, for me, for this channel, which has 4,000 subscribers, a pretty big deal. So we've got that bombshell. Then the Carmine Appice bombshell, I wouldn't put as high as the John Corabi one, only because, which is interesting, because John did not speak to Mick, but John had that gut instinct that something was wrong, with nothing to base it on except for the fact that he knew Mick was in the band and just had that hunch. To me, John kind of started all of us thinking like something's wrong here. Now, Carmine played a very important role because he spoke to Mick at a time when maybe Mick wasn't ready to file a lawsuit to find out what the Crue was actually making. Maybe wasn't ready to fight. Maybe was considering not doing anything. I mean, Motley Crue is a massive band with armies of lawyers. I mean, we've heard when before John started with the band, you know, there was like a room full of them, and they all told him, it's great to meet you, you were never here. I mean, we know about the lawsuits, we know about Motley's and the Guns N' Roses and the Metallicas. These guys have armies of lawyers. I'm a lawyer, and I can tell you, they probably have dozens of them. You know what I mean? And they're out for blood. So at a time when Mick Mars was probably not sure what he was going to do, John Corabi sounded the alarms. Then Carmine comes out, and he actually speaks to Mick and spoke to Mick and put out what Mick had said with Mick's blessing, and that was a bombshell too. But Carmine wasn't in the fold like Stephen Pearcy is. He wasn't in the fold like John Corabi was. But he still got served with a cease and desist letter to shut up. And on top of that was called a washed up drummer and a has-been by Nikki Sixx. But Stephen Pearcy now, I would say that Stephen's comment is kind of like on the same level as John's, and maybe even at a higher level than John's, just because of the fact that they came up together. I can't think of a bigger bombshell, save for a comment from Tommy, Nikki, or Vince, that would top Stephen's. Because honestly, he saw things and was a part of things that rock writers and biographers and super fans can only dream of. And so for Stephen Pearcy to say that Mick Mars was treated with disrespect by Motley Crue, I think is going to warrant some sort of a reaction from Motley. It's not going to be a reaction from Vince. I mean, you know, just recently, it was, in my opinion, a pretty close to co-headlining tour. Stephen opened for him, but there was like 3 acts under Stephen, and Stephen's picture was almost as big as Vince's. To me, that's practically a co-headlining tour. But those two guys are out on the road together touring. So Vince is certainly not going to come out and attack his buddy, Stephen Pearcy, not just because they're friends, but because they've been on the road, they've had successful tours together, and they probably will want to tour again. I can't imagine that Tommy Lee would take a shot at Steven, and Steven probably knows so much about Tommy that he probably would best keep his mouth shut. But Nikki Sixx, who was friends with Carmine, who was brothers supposedly with John Corabi, doesn't take his calls anymore, doesn't talk to him, didn't help him with his son or anything, totally turned his back on him. And on top of that side, the guy can't write a song to save his life, paraphrasing, of course, may actually lash out at Stephen Pearcy. And I don't think Nikki wants that. You know what I mean? I think he could pick on Carmine to a certain extent. I don't think he wants anything with Stephen Pearcy. I think that Nikki Sixx would be an absolute fool to try to create any kind of issue with Stephen. But Stephen Pearcy is not going to have it, first of all. Stephen Pearcy is a man's man. Stephen Pearcy is a brawler, you know, in every sense of the word. Nikki Sixx takes a shot at Stephen Pearcy. Stephen Pearcy is going to fight back. So I don't think Nikki Sixx wants that smoke. And if Motley Crue were to send Stephen Pearcy a cease and desist, you know what Stephen's going to do with that letter. It's going to go in between two cheeks. So let me tell you something. You know, aside from what fallout this may have from the Motley camp, more specifically Nikki Sixx and that manager of theirs, because like I said, Tommy's not going to want to go at it with Pearcy, just like Tommy didn't go at it with Carmine, just like Tommy didn't go at it with John, and nor will Vince, especially since he just got off the road with Steven. Nikki and that Alan Kovac guy and some of those lawyers they've got, that's a different story. They may go after Steven, but like I said, they don't really want to do that, I don't think. Now, aside from that, I think it's very powerful that Steven has come out and made this statement, and the timing of it as well. Because now it's like, you know, the chips have kind of fallen. You know, Mick said what he had to say, and then Motley through Alan Kovac arguably said what they had to say, and now there's kind of like a lull, and now Steven comes out. And I think that that's noteworthy for a couple of reasons. Number one, Steven's not clout chasing. He's not looking for hits. He's not trying to be relevant, as Nikki might try to argue with anybody that criticizes Motley Crue. Steven made the statement when it was kind of dying out, when it was no longer like hot news, it wasn't trending, people's angers have subsided. He came out and made a statement because I feel that it's important to him to set the record straight from his camp, from his side of the world, neck of the woods, whatever. And so I feel that that has a lot more credibility being made now than, say, when it was trending and on everybody's minds. I think that there's undeniable credibility to that. I also think that it speaks volumes about Steven to come out and risk potentially not being able to tour with Vince, as he just did, because he wants to come out and set the record straight. He wants to do the right thing. And that's putting the right thing above money. And I think that that is also very noteworthy. And I also think that it's noteworthy that so many fans and so many fellow musicians like Phil Lewis, like Stephen Pearcy, have come out in defense of Mick Mars. And even though Heavy, which I'm not really familiar with, but it's like a music channel on YouTube, just this week came out with a video about how many musicians hate or dislike Mick Mars, which really seems to be very bizarre, because the video talked about a 1980s feud with Yngwie Malmsteen, a 1980s issue with J.K. Lee that was resolved, by the way. I don't know, to me, I'm curious why Heavy decided to come out with a smear video of Mick Mars and didn't really have much smear in the video. Nothing from this decade, the last decade, the one before the last decade, didn't really have anything except for a title that would suggest that Mick Mars is not liked in the music industry, which couldn't be further from the truth. Nikki Sixx, which they also have a video for, is actually disliked, and other rock bands have arguably written songs about him because they say he's a whatever they say. So I think it's interesting, though. Maybe Steven made the comment because he saw the video trying to take a cheap, low-down, dirty shot at Mick Mars. But I don't think so. I think maybe Steven wanted to say this for a long time. and felt that now that not everyone was talking about it, that it wasn't trending, that maybe now he would, speak his piece, clear his conscience. Because I think that people that have been around, not to say that he's done anything wrong, but clear his conscience in the sense that he knows a thing or two about Motley Crue. He sees the state that Mick Mars is in. 71 years of age, after 41 years with the band, after grueling tours, deteriorating health. When they did Resurrecting Motley Crue, they didn't even know if the guy was alive, and yet they got another 10 plus years out of him. And to now diminish his stake from 25% to 5%, and not even be honest with him about what they're making, forcing him to sue them just to see what in fact he's getting. Is he getting 5% of 60%, or is he getting 5% of the 100%? You know what I mean? He doesn't know. I mean, the guys that diminished him by 80% might conceivably not be telling him the full truth about what they're making. I mean, So the bottom line is, here he is, 71 years of age, when he should be retiring, he should be relaxing and trying to, enjoy what little bit of life he's got left. And if you don't think that the last 10, 15 years have taken time off of him, then you're crazy. Because while his illness is not fatal, it does take a toll on the heart, the body, the skeletal system, muscular system, nervous, all of that. It's all interconnected. And when you got someone doing stadium tours in that condition, you would be, in my opinion, a fool, just like Nikki Sixx would be a fool to attack Stephen Pearcy over his statement. You would be a fool to think that grueling lifestyle of endless playing and recording, because they're recording too on the road, even if they're not coming out with new music, they're always recording, all the press they have to do, not to mention flying. Imagine, people get jet lagged when they go see their relatives. Imagine being jet lagged 5-6 days a week. Because those guys aren't traveling on a tour bus. The way they get to these places so quickly in between shows, they're flying probably. You know what I mean? And they're probably not flying on a commercial airliner. They're probably flying on a Learjet or something like that. And there, you're going to be even more jet lagged, I would imagine, than a commercial airliner. So, look, guys, the reality of the matter is that instead of being able to enjoy what little bit of life he's got left, he's going to be embroiled in a lawsuit probably for the next 5 or 10 years. Because like I said in another video, if Mick's attorneys ask for, I don't know, the earnings of November 2020 to compare them to the earnings of April 2022, they're going to send them, those 20 pages in a U-Haul truck that contains another 50,000 documents. And they're going to say, what you wanted is there. We provided it timely. Thing is, we're not going to give it to you conveniently. You got to dig through all that paper and find it. So they're going to have to hire contract attorneys or law students or whatever, probably at $20, $25 an hour, sitting in a room somewhere, drinking coffee, sifting through these documents electronically, if possible, or maybe flipping page by page. Oh, it's lunchtime. Got to take our lunch break. And that's how you rack up legal bills. And that's how, one side that's got all the lawyers and all the money can royally screw another side that's got less lawyers and a hell of a lot less money and needs to resolve the case expeditiously. They're cooperating. They're giving them what they want. They're just not making it easy for them to get it. You know what I mean? So these are the little tricks that some lawyers play. And anyways, maybe that's also why Stephen Pearcy came out, because, he was involved in a few lawsuits in his day as well, but Stephen Pearcy is strong. He's younger. Well, maybe not younger, but he looks younger, and he's definitely stronger, and he's beat illnesses, and he's beat addictions, and he's beat the trials and tribulations of life, and he's ready to go. Mick Mars, on the other hand, he should be able to rest. He's given enough of his life to Motley Crue, and now he's got to fight in court and have, these crew members of Motley Crue that have been around for maybe a year or a year and a half talk about how Mick was missing chords and his playing was worsening. And, so I believe them as much as I believe the fact that, Elvis and Tupac are alive. But the reality of the matter is they're giving sworn affidavits, not to a court of law, just to be used in social media. Like I said in another video, God help them if Mick Mars' lawyers ever depose them. And they are under oath. And they do have to swear when it's going to end up in a court. Because, I don't think that somebody that's, been a roadie for Motley Crue for a year can speak to the quality of Mick's playing. And maybe they can based on that year, but I just find it very, very unusual that they would come out now in response to Mick saying that Nikki's bass wasn't plugged in and that Vince was singing the backing tracks. And we've seen video of Tommy's drums playing before he even gets to the kit. It just seems a little, it seems like retribution, a little bit vindictive, and maybe not so factual, but who knows? I think that Stephen Pearcy, though, coming out and saying that Motley Crue treated Mick Mars with disrespect, put Stephen Pearcy in Camp Mick, and further alienates Motley Crue not only from the fans, but from their colleagues, from their peers, and in this instance, from somebody that came up just like they did at the same time and the same place, and somebody who knew the inner workings of Motley Crue. And for Stephen Pearcy to come out and say that Motley Crue treated Mick Mars with disrespect takes all the crap that Alan Kovac put out there and makes it completely baseless and moot, and just Stephen, I cannot, it's like Warren Crosby. Robin Crosby. I'm thinking of Warren DeMartini. I'm in a Ratt kind of mind. But, Stephen Pearcy, Robin Crosby, Warren DeMartini, Juan Crucier, Bobby Blotzer, and Motley Crue, those guys were two peas in the same pod. Like I said, in each other's music videos, partying at each other's houses. Just recently, Vince and Stephen out on the road together. You just cannot find somebody closer to the Motley Crue camp than Stephen Pearcy. And for Stephen Pearcy to come out when the whole story died down, when it's no longer trending, when he can't be accused of clout chasing, he can't be accused of clickbait, and he comes out and he says specifically that Motley Crue has disrespected Mick Mars, case closed, done deal. Mic drop from the Voice of Ratt.